Okay, I have a feeling that I might be live. So, yep, okay. So, hello there, and welcome to UK Diesel and Electric Railway Modelling. And this is something a little bit different. So, today, Bachmann announced that they're going to do a Class 313 EMU as a part of their EFE range. Now, I've been thinking about it, and this model, or these models 313, 314, they have the potential to result in a positive snowball of development that could be interesting. So I'm going to explain first. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to let's see. It's been a while since I've done this. Do you know what? I'm trying to remember how to do this. No, that's not the button I'm looking for. That's not the button I'm looking for. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay, so I'm just going to go through the list of what they've announced. Okay, so they've got a 314 because I'm using the Rainbow Railways website here. Now, Rainbow Railways, great bunch of guys. I buy from them a lot. And so, yeah, if you're going to buy model railway stuff, definitely go from them. One of the best things is their delivery. It's fantastic. That, you know, if I buy today, it'll arrive tomorrow. It's that fast. Anyway, so so I'm going to just look at their website here. So they've got a 314 in blue-grey, in Strathclyde PTE, in what I think personally it was the awful carmine and cream livery that they did sort of, you know, in the early time of privatisation, and then the final livery it carried, which was the ScotRail Saltire livery, the blue one, which I thought was, I still think is a really great livery. It looks very good on them. For the 313, they're doing a BR blue, a couple of BR blue, blue-grey ones, the original ones. They're doing two Network Southeast. One is a North London line one. The other one is a Great Northern one. So it's the kind of thing you'd see out of London King's Cross to and Moorgate up the East Coast Main Line, and then diverting off towards the east, and then the North London line is the kind of thing you'd get from Watford to Euston and across the North London line. So you know, you would get them on the Richmond across the North London line to North Woolwich, which would go underneath Stratford Low Level, and they also went down sort of the West London line into Clapham Junction. Then they're doing a Silverlink one, which I also thought was a pretty awful livery. In fact, in my paint collection here, I've got some old Warhammer paints, and I don't have the green anymore, but they had a putrid green and nauseating blue. And nauseating blue is exactly the same shade. as the sort of the purpley shade on Silverlink livery. But anyway, little diversion there. And then for the privatisation era, oh sorry, that is the privatisation era. They're also doing a southern liveried Southern Coastway one, and a purple Great Anglia, Anglia, West Anglia Great Northern one, and the Network Rail one. I think that's all of them. So yeah, but here's the interesting part. So the first one is that there have been very, very few ready to run EMUs, overhead wire EMUs. There's been a couple over the years, but they've mostly been kits and things like that. But this one has a massive potential to change the way model railways are done in the UK. A lot of us love to focus on locos, but if we look at the real railway, it's not been like that for a long, long, long time. It's mostly units with the occasional loco. So in terms of current contemporary stuff, we need a lot more multiple units. But even in the British Rail era, which is my modelling period, you know, there's still hardly anything available, and so this one has a big potential. But the biggest potential is what comes on next, because if we've got this, and you know, we've got Dapol bringing in their 323, and Acura Scale are doing the network, not networker, the Electrostar variants, so 375, 377s, you know, 387s. So it's something I was talking about a number of years ago. If you've watched me do some Hornby announcements videos in the past, I used to say that it'd be really, you know, be really good to see one of those, because, you know, if you think about, you know, you go to a model railway show, how often do you see a contemporary today Southern Region layout? You just don't really get them very much at all. And the reason is because there just isn't any stock. You can't really do much with a Class 450. That's about it. So you can't really do a decent model railway. The 377 opens the door to a much wider range. But that also fits into this, because you got the 315, 313 and 314. The next stage is to add a centre car, and you've now got a 315. There's little differences, but you know, generally it's that simple. So you've got a Class 315. Well, if you've got a 315, why not? You know, Bachmann could sort of say to himself, well, we've got our Class Class 152, a 317. You know, the later version, the 3171, was it, or two? The 317 is pretty much the same thing. It's just a 4-car version of it, and of course, you know, you can just copy pieces of CAD to make body shells and things like that. So there's a lot of very similar parts. Effectively, the hardest part, which is getting the general dimensions right, that's been done already. So it's just finesse of that. But now we're sort of like, okay, well, if they've got a 317, that will go with the 313. That'll work, and the 315. So a 315 and a 317, they worked on the Great Eastern Line out of London Liverpool Street, but the 313s and 317s also ran in Network South East era and before, in blue-grey, out of London King's Cross. So we've now got, you know, two units or 3 units out of one development, out of the 313 and 314. We've now got that. Now they could do a 207. A 507 and 508. Well, what happened with the 508s? Well, the 508s operated at first in London. I think it was the Surbiton line. I think it was. I know one crashed through the station at Surbiton. So if we've got, if they do that, and they've got the 307, 317, they could make one of the 4557s. So the 4557s were 3-car 455s with a 508 vehicle in there. You can always you can always see them because it's like a lower profile. So it's sort of it's a layered thing, and that could open up a huge amount of layout opportunities for everything to sort of fit together. A 455 on the southern region, well, that'll go with that'll go with your 450s and the 377s that are coming, and it will go with the EPBs and the SEPs and Hornby's VEP, and other 419 Kerno did their 4TC. So all these southern region EMUs with a 455, you can now do Clapham Junction. So all you need then is a 442 sorted. But so it's like a snowball. It's cascading, and it could cascade a development of things that are a lot more interesting. So I just thought that was something really worth mentioning. The announcement today in itself is just yep, they're going to make some new trains, and that's a bit and it's an EMU, that's different. But there's a lot more that could come from this. It's exciting to think of the opportunities. Here's just a simple example. So Revolution, I believe they're going to do, and this is in 4mm, so I focus on 4mm. I know that there's N-gauge as well, and maybe they'll do the 313 and 314 in N-gauge, because often Bachmann have done that, although I'm still waiting for them to do a 319 in 4mm. Give it me, Bachmann, give it me. I need about 7, maybe more. So it's imagine I want to do a Great Eastern line. So if you've got a 315 and a 317, that gives you something to, and the 321s as well from Revolution. That gives you something to do with the Mark II FDBSO and the Mark II coaches, and a Helgen 86 to push and pull it. So there's another layout that could be really interesting to see. You could do it towards the privatisation era with the Anglia liveries, liveried coaches and and locos, or then going to one livery, on the with Mark IIIs and Mark III DVTs, and Greater Anglia as well. So it kind of like these things can kind of intersect with each other quite nicely. So yeah, I think I'm really excited by this. There are just loads of elements that can come along. So for me, I'm a terrible I'm like kid in a sweet shop kind of thing. It's like, I'm doing the East Coast Main Line, I'm doing the West Coast Main Line, I'm doing the Great Western Line. when I build a layout, because like if the one day I won't have anything that I need to buy anymore, and so I'll actually be able to build a layout. I've bought loads and loads and loads and loads of stock, but haven't really built much in the way of layout for quite a while. And so yeah, for me this works out really nicely. North London line, I've gone and pre-ordered 7 today. That's 2 for the North London line stuff out of Euston, and 4 for the Great Northern stuff. I could do with another couple for that, but because they ran as 3-car sets frequently, or singles. So yeah, and then and when I do my model railway stuff, I tend to do things in pairs, so clockwise and anti-clockwise around the layout. So yeah, so in terms of out of Euston, and then Great Northern, and then I've got a blue-grey one on there as well, and that'll be modified to have the Network South East lettering on it. So it's still blue-grey livery with Network South East lettering, which lasted until I think it was 1990. The last ones were still in that livery. And of course there is another livery to come, which is the early Network South East livery, which had the tartan blue and then the angled stripes. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what's gonna happen. Are Bachmann gonna just produce a model as an isolated box, or are they going to use it to develop other things? Because that's one of the things that I think is really needed. If you're going to start doing EMUs, you need to start thinking in a sort of a wider area, so that you're not redesigning the wheel every time. That if we do this, well, that leaves options for this and this and this as well, rather than just fixating on one thing. So yeah, this is exciting. This is exciting to me. I'm really hyped up about this. There was another thing that was mentioned. This is change of topic, but I'm in a frame for chatting now. So one of the things that got announced in there. So I was in the live stream, and I'm thinking it'd be nice, Network South East liveried 47, please. And and then the blue-grey one, and the ones that had already been announced, and it's like, oh. And then they mentioned Kerno are doing a 47521 model. Now it's like, oh, nice, excellent. However, it was something most people probably wouldn't have noticed. Me, I've got a memory for detail stuff, and one of the things I remembered as soon as I saw the number was 47321. Excuse me, 47521 in Network South East had a flush front end at the number 1 end. Now Bachmann had done a flush front end at the number 2 end, but they've only ever done it on the number 1 end on one model, and that was in 2008 with their limited with a limited edition of 47461 in ScotRail livery, the only 474 that carried ScotRail livery with the blue stripe, which is a low-car modelling. So Kerno announced that. Guess what I'm going to be doing soon? Also, and there's a whole bunch of locos. I think I've got about 4 locos on my modelling list that have that body shell. Yeah, I'm looking at James Pets here. I proved net was Southeast and 47521. I'd like that in that N gauge. I like to see things done in all gauges, and make lots of people happy. The more models, the better. Helps them sell money. It helps them sell money. It helps them sell models, and it means that we can go to shows and see people with interesting layouts, and home layouts as well. Lots of YouTube layouts. Now. And I just want to add for the fluff front number one end. There's only back in 2012, Bachmann announced that they were going to do 47707 in Network Southeast livery, but I think people pointed out that one had a flush end, and the model that they showed a picture of didn't. And so they just dropped it. It's a shame they never just went, oh, well, we'll do 705 instead or something. So there's the option for me. 707 is on my model list. I already have the nameplates, and so I'll be getting that 47521 and stick some pipes, stick some cables on the end, and stick the sort of wiggly wire on above the batteries on one side, and that'll have the 477. Which is great because, of course, one of the reasons why I've been calling for like a year for Bachmann to do a 47 in Network Southeast is because, again, it's the sort of holistic thing. So, Bachmann produce a Mark II-A, TSO, and a brake, and an FK. But excuse me, my computer lights off.
Okay.
So sorry about that. Yeah. So Bachmann produce. They do a 47, and they do coaches, and then what happened was a Cura scale turned up with the Mark II B and C, and yet Bachmann didn't capitalise on this by bringing in a 47 that will go with it, because it's like, I don't understand. It's if I was Bachmann, I would be looking at other companies and say, well, if they're doing that, then if we produce a 47, that'll go with our coaches and their coaches. If we do Network Southeast coaches, and that will coincide with them doing their coaches, and we do a local, well, we're going to make money, they're going to make money. It's good for both of us. This should be a mindset that manufacturers have. I don't know whether they even think about things like that, or it could just be, of course, that how long it takes from let's say I'm Bachmann, and it's like, it might take 3 years from making a decision to the model being available to be able to make an announcement about it, because the production run, it's like a domino, isn't it? That the we can only announce it here and deliver it there could be a part of the domino that got pushed, like 2 years, 3 years before. So it could be that next year, the summer and autumn will catch up with decisions that, like, they're doing a Mark II-C. Maybe we should do another run of 40, another run of Mark II coaches and our new shiny 47 in Network Southeast livery. So, all these, it would be nice if there was not so much, we have to be careful of monopolies and things like that. That, like, oh, well, if we do this and we do that, we can all make extra money. No, let's make the same money, than you normally would with the normal increase in prices. but I just mean that you know, having a little bit of, you know, because you're doing that, we'll do that. We'll plan something along the same lines, so that things go together. You know, Hornby doing a Mark III DVT when Heljan is doing an 86. You know, again, these work together with the coaches. So, hey, let's join up. You know, let's sort of think about all doing the same, roughly the same thing, so that people have got a train to run behind their loco, or you know, other trains to go with the unit that you know, that's been announced today. The interesting part is this announcement, because Revolution have already announced that they're doing a 3-2-1. So, in terms of the East Coast Main Line from the 90s, you know, from like 93, 94 onwards, that's pretty much the West Coast Main Line now. Because for the southern part of the West Coast Main Line, it was 313s and 321s, and that went through until Silverlink, and it was only until the 350s turned up, and those are produced as well. So really, you know, in terms of the current stuff, someone needs to do a 430 to, you know, continue the trend. So, like I say, there's you know, so many options. I'm terribly sorry. You know, I don't do N-gauge, so I don't know the N-gauge range very well. I don't know what's available. You know, I kind of have like a peripheral view rather than fixed focus. Same with O-gauge. Again, they're not my era. Sorry, it's not my. It's well out of my lane. I'm not even on the road, on that road. I'm on a completely different route. But they run parallel to each other, don't they? Of course. So yeah, it's, you know, I'm looking at repeating myself now. It's interesting stuff. So yes. It's that button, isn't it? So if I turn that one, no, not that one. For some reason, I can't seem to change my screens. Okay, let's turn that off. Turn that off and that on. Aha! Excellent. Right, let's do the center one. Yes. Okay. Right. Good. It's been such a while since I've gone and done a. There we go. This is the Rainbow Railways website. So we can see the models that they got announced today. These are nice to see. The Plaza cranes. I have the yellow one. Bought that from Rainbow earlier this year. Or was it last year? I think it was this year. These are 314s. There's that awful. I hate that livery. It's a steam engine livery on a modern train, and it just like, yeah, you know, never really been keen on that kind of thing. But these are the ones that I bought. The 313026, which is the Great Northern one, and 018, the early one, the North London Line one. And in terms of the North London Line ones, so something to know, a little detail difference on the 313s. In fact, you can see it here on the roof. They've got these massive pods on the first few. I think it's the first 10 or something. You can see it well on this picture here. So you can see they've got these giant air conditioning pods or ventilating pods. They're not air conditioned, so I don't know why I said air conditioning. But yeah, they've got these giant pods on the roof. So yeah, so I'm doing 001 and ironically 16, which is one of the ones they announced today. So I'll be needing to convert mine, one of mine, with these big pods on the roof. And they've, the early Network Southeast eventually will come as well. That had an interesting livery range as well, because they were sort of like experimenting. So this was the original one, black in the middle door, and then there was another version which actually, what did I just show the modelling ones? 213 modelling. These are all the ones I want to model. So at first they looked like that. They didn't have the black around the windows. There you go. There's the black around the windows, and there's the full yellow end with just black in the door. And they look like weird glasses almost. So I thought that was an interesting one to do. Yeah. If you're 3D printed the pods, it'd be interesting to have the STL files to make the N-gauge ones for mine. I'm also hoping to do 313001. I can draw those. I'm going to draw them on 3D printing anyway. So yeah. Incidentally, I've been doing some really good 3D printing stuff lately. I'll show you in a few minutes. Yeah, actually, I'll tell you what I'll show you here. Third rail, I was talking about the 455s and the 4557s. I've got to find a reasonable shot. So you can see here, this is where the lower version is. You can see the body profile difference, you know, because they're much more sort of pear-shaped. These are flat in the middle, curved at the bottom, whereas these are angled inwards. So you can see the distinct shape difference. And there's the two. That's one of the 58XX series ones. So that's the early body design, and that's the late body with the trailer that just is a bit shorter. So it just looks a bit strange, you know. And I always find that quite interesting. But of course, you know, if they do one of those, then they can do the 9 as well, because they just have a centre car, because they'll have a 317 if they chose to do a 317. This one is an unusual unit. It had plug doors on it instead of the recesses just inward sliding. These ones were outer plug doors that they tested on, which is what led to let's have a look. Those 508 carriages and 455s were right to the end. Yes, they're not serving now, as far as I'm aware. I know they're being scrapped. They're going off for scrap now, but I don't know if there's any in service anymore. And for the ScotRail ones, because I don't want to leave people out on the ScotRail stuff, that's brand new. Ooh, that's a funky picture. Can't remember what it looked like, but so yeah, that's what they were delivered in. and it didn't take very long before they came up with Strathclyde PTE livery. So this is the original Strathclyde PT livery, but there was a later variant of it, which was in the sort of like in the preparation for privatisation. Different areas went and sort of created their own brand, and one of the brands was ScotRail, and so ScotRail did this, which has the swoosh logos on and the SPT badges. So same thing with just branding detail differences. I'm not sure if these are available as as transfer parts components. They probably are, and if they're not, they probably will be, thanks to this unit being announced. So yeah, that'll be nice to see. And then they got privatised, and the first livery, this is one of my photos there, but this was the first livery, and I like I say, I just hated it. I really did. It's a steam engine livery on a modern train. You know, you can see the stripes, the lining on the edge of this, and it just, I just don't like it. Then again, I've never really been keen on sort of a maroon colour anyway, but no, it's a steam engine livery on a modern train, and I just think it looks awful. I far more prefer the Scottish Saltire livery. This looks really smart. So yeah. The other livery was like dark and but no. So yeah, and to sort of I showed you 313. These are the 315s. So 315s are basically just 4-car 313s. Except for they don't have 4-car 314s actually, because they don't have the third rail stuff, and they don't have the they don't need to have the voltage changing equipment. So yeah, it'd be nice to see those as well, and then that would lead to go with the 315s. Sorry, excuse me. To go with the 313s, a 3172 would work very nicely. So there we go. So actually, that's the early North Southeast livery. That's in the wrong section. That should be in early North Southeast. But let's see if I can find a good picture. But this is the kind of 313s ran alongside them. In fact, that might be a 313 in the background there. No, it's a trap machine. So yeah, it'd be good to see these come out, and like I say, they've already got the body shell design already done. I mean, this vehicle is pretty much identical. The only thing it would need is the door in the middle, the window in the middle, which is on the early 150, but they've got the plated up version. It'd be nice if they could sort of retro tool that. And of course, because this 313 is going to have a new chassis, a die-cast chassis with motor in the centre car, and it's all low level, then that allows them to use that mechanism in this. And these vehicles, you chop it in half, and that rear section is the half of that. There's the other section. So 2 halves makes that. You know, it's not a huge amount of. It's not a big development issue, really, because they've already got a lot of the stuff done. It's already, the main body shell shape and dimensions are already done. So, so the thing that I have been doing lately is working on my class 165s. So just going to talk about the Bachmann model. So let's pop those two together. So Bachmann did a class 166. The model dates back to 1995. It is an old model now. And if we look at it, you can see how it's basically got a box, and then it's got clip-on side pieces which have the detailing, or which looked really, really good then, but today does look a little bit old. And so I am taking this model and I am upgrading it. This is what it looks like from the top with the body off. And so I'm going to do 3 versions. There is the I'm doing a 166 upgrade. I'm doing a 165 an O, and a couple of 1 and 2 versions of the 1. They're all exactly the same thing, really. The main difference is on the chassis, so I'm going to just the main difference is in the body shells. So DMU second. So I'm going to just show you the 165 first. Okay. 166 first. Okay, so a class 166 is it's just 2 body shell types in effect. So you've got a driving vehicle and a centre vehicle. The 2 outer driving vehicles are identical. They have a first class end at both ends. You can see the yellow stripe, and you can see how you've got under the yellow stripe you've got 2 windows. So you've got the door and the cab door, and then you've got 2 windows. Some of the windows are full windows, no frames. Other ones have got the split frame for the hopper windows. The windows are actually locked, but if the air conditioning system fails, they can open the windows for ventilation. And the main air conditioning system is on the underframe. It's on the other side. I'll show you details in a moment. But you can see on the roof here, these are little mushroom pods in slots. So, like I say, this is a full air-conditioned unit. So I have photos that I got detailed, and so this is a unit that I took, some photos I took at Acton. So, like I say, we've got your 2 windows, and so what we've got is we've got 5 windows in the middle. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then a door, and then 2 windows, 2 small windows. For this, it's the same thing except for where there's driving the cabs, obviously. So it's 2 windows, 2 large windows, 5 windows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the door, and then 1, 2 big windows, 2 small windows. 2 small windows, 2 big windows, door, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's your first class section with 2 windows. Now, on the sorry, excuse me, and this big radiator here is the air conditioning system. On the rest of the underside, they are almost identical. There is a slight difference here with this component, which is between this box and this box here. This is the battery box compartment. So this is between the fuel tank and the battery box on the 166, which you'll see in a moment, because I'm going to move over there now. So 165 details, and 1651. So I'm going to go backwards for this one. So in terms of details, so these are this is pretty much the same except for the roof ventilators, and there you go. Remember I said about, oh no, sorry, it wasn't that box, but there is a box between the fuel tank and the battery box. Underframe wise, it's almost exactly the same. The other difference is one way around. The other difference is it hasn't got the big massive radiator here. It's just got a triangle frame, because these do not have air conditioning. You'll notice all the windows have got hopper windows. So so this is your standard, this is a 2-car 165. So we've got 2 first class windows, plenty of legroom. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a door. Then two large windows, 2 small windows, one being a toilet. There's the toilet tank underneath. And then we've got 2 windows, 2 large windows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then this is where it gets a bit different. So in this section where the first class end, where it was originally just 2 windows, they've got a small window inserted in the middle between the 2 of them. So the 3-car sets are a bit more complicated. So because I'm on the right side here, so I'm just going to go this way. So again, the first class vehicle, actually no, sorry, I'm going to go the other way. This is the correct way to go about it. Okay, so like the 2-car set, the non-first class vehicle has the small window between the 2 windows there, then doors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 windows, doors, 2 windows, 2 small windows. Centre car, 2 small windows, 2 large windows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2 windows, 2 small windows. So that's normal as well. Basically, there's hardly any difference in the centre car between the 166, other than the things I've already mentioned, such as this box and the ventilators in the roof and the hopper windows. This is the vehicle where it's a little bit more interesting. So we've got 2 windows, so 2 small windows, 2 large windows, and then 1, 2, 3, and then here, instead of having a 4th large window, there's a small window and a blank piece of it's a luggage area. There's a sort of partition wall on the inside with a double door, two-way door. Just taking a quick look. So and then you've got your 2 windows on the first class section. Now if I go to some photos of you can't really see it on that. You can barely see it on that. Let's see if I've got better pictures. Okay, so as we can see here, you can see that the first class section is bigger. So it basically goes one extra partition beyond the door. So unlike a 166, which has a first class end at each end in just the section between the cab and the first set of doors, this has got an extended first class section. So I've been working on projects to be able to modify them. Now I've already got so some years ago I started work on converting a pair, and you can see this is the 2-car set, where all it requires is cutting a new window in the middle. So that one's the easy one to do, but this one's a lot more complicated because you've got to fill. You've got to fill a bit of window, and the good news is if you do them in pairs, you can take the two small windows from the centre car, and that's how you can splice them in here, and that's where you get your window for there as well. So you don't lose anything by doing a 2-car set and a 3-car set. So again, it's fill the holes in the roof, and there's a couple of extra little details as well. They've got like a little vent, and that needs to be filled, but by and large it's a pretty simple conversion for the 2-car set. Harder for the 3-car set, but this is where I'm looking to make some changes. So so I've been looking at doing 3D printed parts. So my first thing was to make a blank, so it's designed to slot right in there, and it fills up to the edge of the line, and so all you have to do is glue it in, bit of filler, sand it down wet and dry, smooth it right down, and you've got a nice clean piece. For the windows, the hopper windows, so the original Bachmann model was literally painted rims. It was just paint on top of dark glazing. I'm looking to replace it with 3D printed glazing with the frames built in. Unfortunately, I haven't had a huge amount of success with printing with the clear resin. It just doesn't seem to print. So I'm thinking about I need to sort of tweak the settings a little bit more to try and get it. But these are just the test pieces I used to get the size right. There you go. That's an example of what the windows will be like. And this is me drawing. That's if I could get them to print, that would be one vehicle. That would be a 3-car set, a 2-car set, and a 3-car set, and that would be like a 166, a 2-car 165, and a 3-car 165. And I got add some space. I'll put some extra windows in around there on the outside. But again, annoyingly, it didn't print up. It was really disappointing. 3 attempts, and it just wasn't working. But there's the general design I've been working on. So this is an example of the toilet tank. So there's the drawing that I did, and this is what it prints out like. Now, I just want to point out that this is a low resolution print. It's to get the sizing and shape right and the general detail. If you look, you can see the lines on it. So I'm just going to explain about 3D printing. Okay, so generally generally speaking, for the sort of home, kind of 3D printers, there are two main variants. There's the filament printers, so you basically got a reel of something that looks like a plastic plastic rod on a reel, and it goes through a hot end and it gets squirted out like toothpaste, and what happens is, the head basically goes side to side, and the head goes side to side, and the floor goes backwards and forwards, so it's able to make three-dimensional objects. And what it does is it prints one layer and then goes up and it prints another layer, so it's doing everything in these layers. The other form of 3D printing is resin. So what you've got is an LCD screen at the bottom that emits ultraviolet light, and then you have a bath of resin with a clear bottom on the bottom, at the bottom of the bath. And so the bed is vertically goes in, and it basically goes in and lifts up slightly, and then the light is exposed, and then the light turns off and the bed lifts up and goes down, and then the light is exposed, and the bed goes up and down, and it just goes up, and it just goes higher and higher and higher as it goes through the layers. Now, in terms of prototyping designs, like I showed you a moment ago with the toilet tank, the more you can have multiple layers, so you can have layer thicknesses. You can choose what your layer thickness is. So my 3D printer can do 1/10 of a millimeter to 1/1000th of a millimeter. So it can go from 0.1 millimeters, 10 layers per millimeter, to 100 layers per millimeter. Now, when I do underframe detailing, I will do 100 layers per millimeter. For doing prototype stuff, I'll probably do it at maybe 40 layers per millimeter, because that will print off quicker. Because the thing you have to bear in mind with the exposure thing, let's say it takes 10 seconds. So it says it takes 10 seconds to do one exposure cycle. So that's expose the light, the light to go off, the bed to go up, to go down for the next layer, to an exposure, to go up, to go down, exposure. So it's 10 seconds to do a cycle. Let's just say 10 seconds. It's a bit longer, but 10 seconds is just an easy way to make it up and figure it out in your head. So if you do 40 layers per millimeter, then that's 10 times 40 layers. So if you've got something that's 10 millimeters in height, 10 millimeters in height, that's 400 layers, which means that it's going to take 10 times 400. If you do 100 layers per millimeter, and it takes 10 seconds for each exposure, if you're doing something that's just 10 millimeters high, that's 10 times 10,000. No, 100 layers per millimeter. Yeah, that's 10 times. So that's like 1,000 layers at 10 seconds. So you can imagine the more layers, the more detail, but also it takes longer to print out. So if I do it on a 40 layers per millimeter layer at level, a print, then that'll take maybe 3 or 4 hours to do for something that's relatively small. If I do something that's 100 layers per millimeter, then it's going to take 9 hours to print off a little thing. So it's a case of using the right things for the right jobs. And you know, I've already been producing 3D printed parts such as these Mark III interiors, which have I've got seats that go with them. If you watch like something like Dean Park, so there's my seat. If you use the Dean Park Facebook group, or you're on Facebook in general, or on I forgot what it was called, Instagram. No, not Instagram. Is it Instagram? That doesn't matter. Anyway, if you know Dan Havlick, who does a lot of third rail EMUs, he's doing a Class 442, and I did some drawings for him. So so he's been delighted by those. So I spent several days doing the drawings to be able to produce them for him, and I printed them out and sent them to him. Now, so I want to get back to the three. Want to get back to the 165 because it feeds into all this stuff. So there's the toilet tank. There's what I produced. So these are the windows. Okay, so here's a fun one. So my original plan, because I wanted proper headlights with the little vertical marker light. So the way lights work on this class, or it's certainly the way they did, because they've modified them, they're now LED lights. But the original lights had a marker light on the outside of each one, a headlight and a tail light. And in operation, you would have during the day you'd have a headlight on and a marker light. So this light and that light wouldn't be on. And then going backwards, it's the red lights, obviously. And then when they changed to the night setting, they would have the marker light and the headlight on the inside. So that would be the operation. Now the problem is that the original model, so this is the original model with all the paint off, and you can see it's just a recess with a couple of holes in it. Originally it had 2mm, or was it 3mm? Yeah, 3mm. LEDs poking through, and they were like soldered together. So if the train went clockwise, it would be headlights, and then on the other back of the train it would be a tail light on. And when it went the other way, it'd be the same, vice versa. Headlights on the at one end, taillights at the other end. In order to do DCC, you'd have to change the circuit board to be able to operate the lights. But like I say, it was a model from the mid 90s and 1995 models. DCC wasn't really much of a thing yet. So these YPAC headlight pieces, these are from Shoreplan. So it's like, okay, what am I going to do about the headlights? Now, like I say, my original idea. Oh wait. Oh, it's there. Okay, it's all here anyway. So my original plan was to drill out a tiny hole and put some tower LEDs, and this is what the circuit board is like. The problem is, cutting a tiny hole consistently, because remember I've got 4 to do for each unit. I own 10 units in total. So trying to not only is it difficult to cut a tiny hole like that consistently, but also you've got to try and feed this through. It means that I would sand down some tower LEDs to make the vertical marker lights. The problem is that this is really brittle piece of plastic. So if it gets stuck as you're trying to wiggle it in, then this could snap off, and then you've got to redo all this all over again. So it's a real nuisance. So it was a good idea for the time. However, I came up with a new idea, and so I made 3D printed parts that can go through the hole. So at first I was like really nervous about doing this, because when you've got something like this, if I carve a hole through there, it's really easy to cut a hole. It's really hard to put the hole it's really hard to put it back again if what you planned didn't go to plan. Fortunately, I was able to do that, and so I produced this. So they have these little angled end pieces on, and so this piece is the bit that protrudes through the body shell, and there's the YPAC light on the top. And I've created the holes already there. And something of note, if you didn't already notice, the holes for these, the headlights are bigger than the red lights. So these have been drawn with Shawplan's etch in mind, and the outer So anyway, so the idea is that this will push through the inside, but I was a little bit clever, because trying to get the idea is I'll have surface mount LEDs on the inside. Problem is, they're really quite small and difficult to position in very, very specific places. And I'm only going to use this kind of technology. I'm just going to use a bit of Veriboard, cut it to shape, and then solder them on. But the problem is, trying to get one in a little tiny hole is really difficult. So what I did was I modified the inside so it's a circle on the inside, and I'm just going to that's my new bedroom, so let's get rid of that. So open, see our bedroom, so it's my 65 stuff, and it's so this is the So this is the design. Like I say, it has this little edge piece on it, and on the back it's a circle. And if you look, can you see how the holes don't go in exactly the same places? They're sort of, so if I show you the cones on the inside, I go vertical, there you go, you can, that's what it looks like on the inside. So they're all neatly positioned. I might change it so the angles are a little, it's a little bit smaller, but maybe this is a little bit more shallow of an angle, but it still comes down to the same thing, where they're in a good position for putting it in. The idea is I'll paint the inside in silver, and then there are things that you can stick over the top to be the glazing. Effectively, it's just like a paint that bubbles, that creates a blister effect over the top, so that can be the glazing element of them. So it's just a little bit of tinkering around, and then the latest piece that I did was this, which is the battery box, and the detail is quite impressive. In fact, I can show you open under frame battery box. So yeah, there's lots of details in there, everything right down to the hinges and things. Because if I show you something 166 details underframe. Yeah, so if you look at the battery box, you can see the hinges, and these are like the warning symbols and things. You know, the little locks to hold the doors in and everything. And there's the extra detailing. So yeah, that's what I've been replicating here. You can see there's the little lock pieces. And you might think, a handle sticking out, how's that going to 3D print? It's got an insert. And I've done the same thing for the sort of the ball rotating. You know, it's basically a spindle with an arm with the ball on the end. So yeah, I don't know about making teeny safety warning decals. I think it'll be more down to I'll paint them in white and yellow and whatever colours they need to be, because you know, these are like so tiny. I mean, I'll just show you how small these things are. So if I use the measure tool, so from this surface to this surface is 0.5 millimeter. So this is tiny. You know, yeah. So like I say, all these components are just so tiny. It's beyond belief, really. So yeah. Now, so this is where things are going to be a bit more interesting, because, you know, I want to make. I do all this sort of insane amount of detailing sometimes, but it's nice if other people want to do these things as well. But I'm really not interested in, you know, one of the problems that you get railway modelers who do this kind of work, you know, like they want to do this incredible detail stuff. But next thing you know, they've decided to go into business doing model railway stuff, and they spend all their time filling packets and, you know, taking orders, printing stuff off, cleaning stuff up, sticking it in packets, going to the post office and mailing stuff off. I'm 51 years old. I haven't got enough time to spend the next, you know, decade trying to print stuff up for the other people. And so, you know, but I also want to make these things available to other people. I had a thought about sort of, you know, doing a deal with, you know, some other little group who will print them out. So basically what would happen is, let's just use an example. Let's say I print off, the HST interior. So, so let's say I do into HST interiors. Well, I've done the drawings, I send them off to someone who produces them, prints them out and then mails them to you, and they just give me 10% or whatever, you know. So that would be great. But the problem is, again, it's a lot of rigmarole, and then there's a load of accounting, and what happens if it's really successful, and then I've got to start worrying about, you know, like tax receipts and all that kind of stuff. I haven't got time out of that in my life to do that. And again, like you said, James, you know, if you make your job out of your hobby, you no longer have a hobby. You know, how much time do you think Brian at Shawplan or the guys at West Hill Wagon Works, or Tim Horn, who does great baseboards, how much time do you think they spend able to do any modelling of their own? They spent all day doing stuff for other people. I'm sick of doing modelling for now. I'm just going to go and watch TV or something, and nothing gets done. So it's like, you know what? I haven't got time for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make them freely available. So I'm basically going to produce STL files, and I'm going to pop them up on somewhere like Colts or something of that nature, and you'll be able to just print them off. You know, I might have a price to charge. So for example, a 165, I might charge 10 quid for all the component parts to do it, and then you just print them off. So you buy it once, but you can print off 20 units if you wanted. Now, of course, whenever someone does something like that, whenever I do something like this, someone could take the piss. Someone could print off 1,000 of them and chuck them on eBay. But the thing is, that's going to burn you, the person who would do this kind of thing. Sorry, the person who would do this would be burning you, my viewer. The people who might think, oh, I'd like one of them, So what happens is, let's say I do the 165, and they and someone goes and steals my design and makes loads of them and sticks them on the internet. Where's my incentive to do it again? Because I have lots of projects in mind. Funnily enough, one of the projects that I had in mind was to do a 313 and a 315. I don't need to anymore. I'm glad they announce it now, because a year from now I might be doing the drawing. It would be really annoying to have done, like tens of hours of drawing only for some ready-to-run manufacturer to like, right, we're going to bring out this. It's like, there's a bit of an old joke with railway, sort of detailers and scratch builders or something. Just when you get stuck in, or just when you've finished it, maybe someone goes and brings out, the thing you've just made, and it's going to look better. But saying that though, if this all prints off the way that the test prints have done, this is considerably better than it was. I'm producing stuff that was plastic injection molding stuff, like with the Bachmann 150 or current stuff. I'm just doing it in smaller, amounts. Obviously, when you're a manufacturer of the likes of Bachmann or Hornby or whatever, they're producing thousands of these things, and I'm producing, a tiny amount by comparison. So the economies of scale, it's like, yes, it's a lot more expensive to tool up a new model. You're talking like £100,000 for the body shell mold, and the same for an underframe mold, and so on. So all the parts you need to build the unit, the glazing, the bodies, the cast chassis, the detailed parts like the bogies and brake equipment and underframe boxes, etc., etc. All these components, excuse me, I need a quick drink. All these components, 3D printing them is, it's great for prototyping, it's great for small build stuff, but when you're making thousands of models, then, injection molding is the way to go. But I can get some really, really great stuff from 3D printing, sometimes better than manufacturers are able to do. And and again, it's a bit like I was talking about before about with the 3D printing things. This is on the interior, so this can be printed at a lower resolution. This can be the 40 layers per millimeter, and it'll look fantastic. Whereas the and just so you realise, the detail's not going to come out on the camera very well, but it's a bit wonky. It's really, but you can see the this here is the fire extinguisher. can see the door, the sort of panel on the door. This this end, this is the toilet. You can see the door handle, and there's the little louvered floor. So it's probably not going to come across. It looks for faces. You know, it's a bit wobbly, but it's fine. But yeah, so as I was saying, so let's say I produce these 165 parts and make them available for everybody, and someone goes and steals the design. Well, these other projects that I've got, for example, just simple one, TPOs. There are a lot of TPO vehicles. So far, Bachmann have done 2, and there's nobody else that does them. Okay, so we've got 2 vehicles out of like 16 variants or something. I'd like to do a whole bunch of different versions. And you know what, James? There's no reason why I couldn't reduce them into 2mm. I don't know if there's already someone doing 3D prints of them, but you know. But what'll happen is you can have a 3D printer and you can print your own, and it'll all be good. So you know. So, but like I say, just take TPOs. Let's say, you know, if I do my 165s and someone goes and steals my design because I made them freely available, other than, you know, a basic cost to just, you know, it keeps the incentive for me to do more. Gives me something. It obviously doesn't cover the cost of you know, doing all the drawing. If I was, you know, if I was to do it as like a living, you know, like £15 an hour. Can you imagine how much it would cost for me to print, you know, to design something for you, let alone print it out? So, yeah, the idea is I'll make it available. Someone steals it. Where's my incentive to make anything else available? Someone will just steal it again. I'll just do my own stuff, and that means everybody else loses out. So, you know, I hope if something like that happened, that that people were kind enough to let me know that it's happening, and you know, and people will not buy them because they can download them for free, or for nearly free, and you know, and print them off at home, or get a friend to do it for them. So many people got 3D printers these days. It's the way to go. So yeah, that's where I'm looking to go. So still got a lot of boxes to do on the underframe, but I mean, I've just given an example. I managed to find some really good stuff. So details, and one of the pictures I've got around here somewhere. There it is, engine. I'm going to be producing something like that. You know, I've got a whole bunch of photos that I got from the manufacturer. I got them from Perkins. So yeah, I got a whole bunch of pictures that I can use to draw them. And they're not going to be quite as perfect as this, but they're going to be pretty damn good. Certainly good enough that if you look underneath, it's going to be, you know, it's going to be a lot better than what you get on the under a Bachmann 150. That's for sure. So yeah, so I got all those sort of details, and you know, I'm doing like, you know, one of the next bits will be the coupling, because that will be a part of the cab, and you know, sometimes the collision pictures are actually really useful, so you can see there's the raft that the engine is mounted on. It sort of sits on this frame on the bottom, and so yeah, there's the pipe on the top, and it comes down to this. I think it's an oil cooler or something. I don't know. I don't know what the bits do. I just see it and I'm going to make it. But for the engine, it's really interesting because it basically goes from underneath the the back of the engine, goes through an exhaust. Where was it? Yeah, so it comes out from under here, goes through the exhaust baffle, and then goes back underneath, and then goes up under the bogie, and then pops out on the back and goes up the top. Now, something I should mention as a part of my thinking. So, on the model, the driving vehicles, the chassis is plastic. So this raised box in the middle with the sort of raised boxy engine piece, that is that's a raised piece. In fact, if I just turn that off, transition here. So this is the Bachmann 166 chassis, and these are the side frame parts. You can see, you know, if you look at the detail, I mean, look at that battery box there. Very, very simple. You imagine what mine's going to be like by comparison. You know, that's about the best you got for the engine. And then on the other side, that's the exhaust. It's just a raised piece of half curved. That's it. It's just a semicircular piece of plastic that's stuck on the edge. It's not very good. And in the centre, it's got this raised box. Now this is, so my plan is for the unpowered vehicles, I'll just scrape off the whole box. The whole box will go, and it'll be a flat floor, and on the inside it's got like a recess on it, so you can just put like 2 pieces of plastic card, like an insert, and it will just hold the frame, and that will be nice and rigid for you. And then all the components will just slot underneath. I might make a when you look at a model like Bachmann Mark 1 or something, let's say, or Mark 2, what you've got is a flat floor, and it's got holes in it, and that's where all the components get glued on. I might make a panel as the recess, and all the parts can attach onto it, with little things to mark it out for the right place. For the motor mechanism, it's a little bit more complicated because that has a cast chassis. If I show you so if I show you this, so this is a solid chassis frame, and it's got a recess in the middle, and the clip that holds the motor in position, that has a screw at the bottom that goes into the frame, and if you when you turn it upside down, you can just make out the screw there. The other one's here underneath that, so you can just make out where the screw protrudes through. It doesn't really protrude through, it's just like flat on the edge. But So yeah, the one thing that is an issue is the interior. So the driving vehicles, they have potential to have a full interior, and that's all wonderful. Problem is, you can't really do it with the motor vehicle at the bottom, because you've got these two blocks first that have the which is where the bogie tower screws onto, because these units were well over engineered really for what they do. A 3-car unit that's got a locomotive style chassis. This is I mean, you could put a normal coupling on. You could pull 8 coaches with this, just the motor and more. It was very powerful. It runs like a dream. So the problem is, I would like to put interior lighting in it. You can do it fine with the driving vehicles. Sorry, with the cab vehicles, unless it's a 2-car set, because of course one of these mechanisms will go inside. If you notice, you can see there's a cutout on the edge. That's where so it can fit into the cab, because this chassis is exactly the same thing that's used in the 158 and the 170. The only difference is that they got different bogie frames on the 158, but the side bits that clip on, either clip on or screw on in this on the motor vehicle. That's the only real difference. Just different detail parts underneath. So what am I going to do regarding the interiors if I wanted to put lights on? Well, if I put lights on, you'll just see the gubbins on the inside. You'll see the motor. So I've had a cunning plan. So this is what it looks like on the inside, and so my idea is where is it? I have it in the middle. This is my idea, and you might think, okay, what is this? This is an insert. So imagine this is the outside of the body here, and this will be a flat interior part, and it's got holes at the top so I can have light LEDs shining downwards, and then on the inside for each window section I'm gonna do so my intention is to do an 3D printed interior with the seats on it, but I'll only have one side. So one side will be flat, and the other side will have the seats and maybe passengers in there. And what I'll do is I'll paint it up, and then I'll photograph it. So the idea is that I'll have a series of photographs that I can have, get them printed off, like photos, and then so there'll be like a projection screen. So the photo will be angled so that the light comes down vertically and shines the light on it. It'll be it'll have matte varnish on it, so the light, it will be lit up, but it won't have any depth. So if you ever play video games, sometimes you might have a vehicle or something. You don't go into the vehicle, or you might have a window on a building, and so they just have almost like a transparency behind it. So you've got like the shininess of the window, but behind it is just like, a general idea of what it would look like, almost like a shadow of a room inside. But you can't go inside, so you don't need to have an interior. So yeah, it'll be a projected interior, low relief interior, yes. So it's a low relief interior that has virtually no depth, but it will. So if you can imagine, most of the time we'll be seeing our trains, because This is one that I've already done with the glazing, although it's not glazed, it's just the 3D printed parts. So if you can imagine, you'll be looking at it from this angle. So it will have lights in the windows, and if it's like this, you will still see inside and see pictures of you'll see an interior, but it won't be a proper interior. It'll just be a low relief projection of an interior. So I think it's the only way I can achieve that. Because the thing about it is, I want to have my coaches with with lit up interiors, and so if I've got, let's say I'm doing my Great Western layout, I could have that lit up. My HST's lit up as trains are going by, and the 117s can have lights on in the inside. But the 165s, they don't have any lights on the inside because, But with this, I might be able to do that. So it's an idea at the moment. I don't even know whether it'll work. I've seen it worked in other ways, and like I say, in order to how do I make the graphics? I'll just paint it like the model. Because if you think about it, when I've got the interior painted on these, then it'll be a model. It won't be real people. They'll just be a model. So it'll just be nicely painted modelling. The seats will be painted. The interior, the floor and everything will be painted, and the people will be painted, and so I'll just be taking a photo of a model and then putting it in a model which will have visible vehicles where you can see the model parts inside. So it just seems like an idea that could work. It's an interesting strategy, but hopefully it'll work. So, and as I said, I've got 10 units, 10 165, 166s, because, in the sort of post 1992, 93, 92 was when they started coming into traffic. By 93, they were pretty much all in traffic by then. They were still making a few 166s. So by 94, or the end of 93, they're all in traffic now. All the 117s and things have been either withdrawn or they've been sent over for the cross. They did some stuff on the West London line, and also on the what's it called? Starts with M. It was like Bletchley to direction, across to Oxford or something, I think. But anyway, doesn't really matter. Either way, with all the 165s, that's the primarily thing. It's that and HSTs. That's the passenger trains. All the 47s and Mark 1 and Mark 2 coaches, they're all gone. They're now all 165s. So, some are going express ones that not only stopping at a few places, other ones stop at every station. So, that's my plans, and again, it's like I was saying earlier about the 313, we need a lot more multiple units for our railways, because the railway is mostly multiple units. If you have one or two units and like 15 locos, that's not really like the real railway unless you go to Barnaby. The real railway is a lot of units, and it's not like there isn't Japanese model railways. It's almost all units, so and people buy loads of them there as well. So like I say, it's not a it's just going with what the real railway's like, and it's always been like, really. The stopping trains out of Manchester, where they were 304s and 305s. And then, you know, like I say, you got your 142s and 150s and things of that nature, 156s, 158s as well. Most of these trains are like that now. Mostly DMUs and EMUs. That's the world that we live in, and it's been like that for a long time. So, may not be as cool, but it is the real railway. And for me, I think modelling the railway as it is, you know, is one of the appeals. So, you know, when you, you know, that's the reason why I say about this 313, it has the potential to change the way that we do model railways. You know, still have locos. Locos still have a place, but units are one of the predominant things, and you know, they're interesting. So, yeah, I think I'm going to finish now. I think, you know, I've sort of gone in like a big circle. It's all been about units, really, with the exception of mentioning that 47. But, yeah, so, like I say, just to give the last bit, you know, this new 313, if it is successful, could have Bachmann and, you know, and the likes of, you know, Dapple. They've just done they've got a 323 coming. I have 6 of them on order. I got 4 Birmingham ones and 2 Manchester ones. The Birmingham ones during the rush hour, they ran in pairs. So in Manchester they basically never did, in my modelling period anyway. The in Manchester 323 they only ran the singles. The only, I mean, I've been living up here since 1991, sorry, and I've only until recently, when Northern started running them from, you know, like Manchester to Liverpool or something, and like, I mean, they go up to, I think they go up to Blackpool as well now. So, you know, it's wonderful that we've got electrification that far. But until until Northern, basically, the only time you would see 323s in multiple in Manchester was ECS trains going to Longside, where they just put 2 units together, 1 driver to go down, or on the on match days, when Manchester United, because they have a little station next to the Manchester United football stadium. So when they have matches, then they would stick 2 units together to go down. But like I say, they don't really do that. You know, sorry. You know, but like I say, so I only need 6. You know, 4 in Centro, 2 in Greater Manchester PTE. So I think that's it. That's it. I'm finished now. I've been chatting for a couple of hours, I think now, and I think it'll be interesting to see where things go. So we shall see. I'm going to get going now. So it's been lovely chatting to you, mostly myself. Thank you for the people who are live now. Thank you, James. It's been good to have you commenting as I've been going along. It's good to have people, you know, sort of guiding me in the right direction, agreeing with me where they agree with me, maybe not agreeing with me. I apologise because, of course, I do 4 mil, so that's my focus, and I don't, you know, that's. I want to see more units in any gauge. I want to see more trains in any gauge, really, you know. But units are the one thing that, you know, is really missing. Because I say I'm going to go, but I'm going to get on another sort of mini rant here. One of the things that's happening now is we're seeing reimaginings of the same thing, and now multiple reimaginings of the same thing. We've got Bachmann and Akira Scale doing 37s and 31s. We've got we've now got Cavalax doing a 47 and Bachmann have done a 47, and Helgen did something that I think is trying to be a 47 but doesn't really look very good at all. Bit tongue-in-cheek there, but that is a pretty awful model. I just got it so bad. But you know, yeah, so we need more EMUs. EMUs is a big thing. Thank you, James. We need more EMUs. There really haven't been much in the way of, certainly overhead, EMUs, and there are so many of them. Why aren't we seeing any? You know, I said I was toying around the idea of doing a 313. I definitely have ideas about doing you know, Mark 1 based EMUs. 302s, 304s, 305s, 308s, 307s. 307s are a good one. And you know, I'd like to push beyond that and do 310s and 312s. 303s are really complicated, and I don't really need many. Or you know, I've got one, DC Kits one, and you know, I could do with two more as a sort of, you know, like to do some other bits as well, but I don't really need them. Saying that though, they are potential. I was actually you know, on the Dean Park Facebook group, and someone said about, you know, yay 314, maybe they'll do a 303, and I was thinking, you know, 303s, they got very, very limited area. And then I thought to myself, yeah, but yeah, sure, they only really operated in two places. They operated in Glasgow primarily, and they also operated in Manchester for you know, for a decade or so. But I actually looked it up, and I figured out that there are 8 different liveries available. Sorry, livery options available. So there's refurbished and unrefurbished, and so there's you know, there's like 2 refurbished ones, and 6 unrefurbished liveries that could be done. So for example, unrefurbished would be original blue train, BR blue, blue grey with various different branding on them. So they had Manchester branding, they had Strathclyde PTE branding, they had Trans Clyde branding, and then there was Strathclyde PTE livery, and then there was all Manchester PTE livery, so like orange with brown around the windows. And then finally there was a real oddity. There was a NetWest South East liveried one, 303999, which was the last refurbished, the last unrefurbished class 303 around, and that operated out of Clacton as a route learner and Sandite vehicle, although I don't know whether it really got used. Someone once told me that it scraped some platforms, so they couldn't. It had a very limited amount of area usage, and so they just didn't bother. So it just sat at Clacton for a long, long time. But yeah, so you know, it, between the sort of the, you know, there's 6 opportunities for a number of refurbished one, 2 opportunities with and 11 different, by the time you add different branding on, there's 11 different you know, sort of box sets, you know, 3-car boxes that you can sell. So you know, it's like there is longevity in having these things, but of course if they're done in as a part of a projected design process, you know, that one thing will follow on to another, to another, to another, to another. If we do this, then we can take the centre car and we can do that unit. If we do this unit, we can do this part, you know, those parts, and add it, and to be able to make another one. So all these things kind of fit together to be able to produce a wider range. The question is, will they sell? And that's always one of the issues. Well, I think they can now, because when it comes to one of the things I remember being told at shows, you know, I remember being told by Dave, who used to work for Dapol, that, you know, the one that went bust said they were going to do lots of things and went bust and left people without money. That one. Dapol Davey went by. So I remember him once saying that electrics don't sell. Well, if, you know, I don't know how many 90s people have gone and bought, and 86s of people have bought, and the new 91s on the East Coast Main Line, you know, and the 92s that Kira Scale did, you know, a couple of years back, of which I've got 2 on pre-order for the next batch. So yeah, it's, you know, there's they do sell, and one of the reasons why they can sell as well is because we've got the likes of Westo Wagon Works and a few other people that are making overhead wires that you can attach to your layout. So there is the opportunity to have these things on your layout. If they can sell locos, they can sell units, electric units, and that's going to be interesting, you know, something extra to go with your layout. So more, you know, I'm just gonna conclude with what James Post said, which is, it's good to have EMUs. More EMUs, please. Yes, manufacturers, more EMUs. Thank you. Bye bye for now.